Hello everyone, welcome back to the Analyst for 22nd February 2024, where we'll be trying to understand the most important articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express. Now, I hope you all are doing well, and with this, let us start with the table of contents. The very first topic that we are going to discuss today is according to a recent NASSCOM study, the digital public infrastructure in India is on the rise. In the next one, we'll be looking at the restructuring health system, and this is regarding to editorial in the Hindu. In the next one, we'll be looking at what is the FSDC and its concerns regarding the online digital lending. Next, we'll be trying to understand what is the concept of a rights issue in the capital markets of India. And finally, we are trying to understand what is the Sugarcane FRP and its various understanding. Starting with the very first topic, this is about India's digital public infrastructure. Recently, a very prominent organization, that is NASSCOM, released a report based on India's DPI. Now, companies time and again to release many reports about India's, say, service sector, manufacturing sector, say, digital public infrastructure. Why? Because they generally want to know what is the status of DPI in India, so that other companies and also they can have some investments in the same. Now, that is the report and why these companies actually release such reports. But here, we have to focus on this concept of DPI. Now, the context is that recently, according to this report, it has been found that India's DPI ecosystem has created value creation of around 0.9% of the India's GDP in 2022, that is 2 years ago. So, we can understand the importance of the DPIs in India's GDP, economy's growth. Now here, obviously for UPSC prelims, this is very important because we have economics in that. In GS3, we have a very specific portion of infrastructure in the same. Now starting with DPIs, let me ask you a very interesting question. Are you in the real world or in the imaginary world? Obviously, you will be thinking, obviously we are in the real world, but we are also in the digital world. For example, you are watching this video on YouTube, and this is what? This is actually on the imaginary, or say digital world, right? Perfectly, it is not imaginary in this notion, because the thing that you cannot touch YouTube, you cannot say touch this video, but you can watch and feel and understand and important concepts you can learn from this video. That is what makes it kind of imaginary but yet real. In fact, you are in the real world, and obviously the various services we use, for example, say watching videos, movies, say watching various other lessons, transacting on, say, a digital medium, say using BHIM UPI services and so on, or say buying any goods and services on e-commerce platform. What are all these things? These are the things that we do on a digital life. This is actually a part of our digital lives. And can you all agree with me with one statement, that digital lives right now are very important? For example, let us take the case of a farmer. The farmer is seeking for some government benefits, for example, say PM Kisan. For that, the farmer needs to what? For the very first thing, the farmer needs to verify his or her details. So, for example, say there is another government scheme that the government is thinking, okay, what we can do, we can help the farmers in recognize their land. So, we will be giving them property rights, proper official land records. How can the government do it? So the government can say, ask the farmer that you come over, we are located 200 kilometers away in the district headquarters. You come over here, we will be seeing your physical documents. You will be, say, requiring to pay 10 rupees, 15 rupees fee for that. Then, for example, you have to wait for around 2 days in the, say, district headquarters, and we will be giving you the land parcel documents, finally officially signed by us. Is it a very good way to go on? No, right? Because always the government will be the betterment of the people. And if we have technology, if we have digital services, what is the big delay in that? For example, now the farmer will tell, okay, I will have to, say, travel 200 kilometers along the highway, and I will have to, say, take a car, bus and so on to go there. That is a part of physical infrastructure, right? Cars and bus and roadways and highways are what? These are parts of physical infrastructure. But on the same hand, the farmer can also say that, okay, I have something known as DigiLocker. On DigiLocker, I have my Aadhaar card saved, right? And I already know about the land record website. So I can go on the state government's land record website, and I can just sign in my username. I can just sign in the same with a mobile application on the same of the same purpose. I can use the GPS services there to pinpoint my farm, and with that I will be attaching my own digital ID. And if the government needs fee for this thing, I will be paying it by UPI. So the farmer is very smart. The farmer will be doing the same because we have something known as digital public infrastructure. This is simply the same thing, the same concept that we have in physical infrastructure. What are physical infrastructure? For example, the national highways that we have, airports that we have, rail infrastructure that we have. They do what? They facilitate the ease of movement for the people, for the goods, for the services across the country and even outside the country. But these are the things we can see in our day-to-day lives. But on the same hand, we also have something known as digital infrastructure. For example, the payment systems, the banks that we have, the banks channel that facilitate the transactions of UPI and various other net banking. That is a digital transaction, or say digital infrastructure that is actually facilitating the transaction. We also have what? We also have various mechanisms to actually protect our information that is available on the websites, on the digital medium. That is, for example, our user ID and password. As we all have seen, sometimes it is saved by our browsers, right? How that is saved? Because, for example, say Google, Microsoft, they have some sophisticated mechanisms known as digital infrastructure in their servers that will be keeping our information safe on their servers, right? That is the same thing. On the similar hand, we also have Aadhaar card, we have PAN card, we have many digital identification things that we normally have. And who will be saving the same? The government will be saving the same. And for government to save this kind of information, don't the government need some infrastructure? For example, say servers that the government themselves will be having, some good amount of security agents, cyber security experts who will be guarding the same. So this is actually the main concept of digital public infrastructure. For example, right now we have around 800 million smartphones in India with 5G networks. Right. Next, we also have a large amount of optical fiber that is actually doing what? That is actually facilitating the broadband internet connection, right, directly to homes. Next, we also have many gram panchayats in India who are connected to BharatNet projects. BharatNet project is nothing but the linking of various villages, their gram panchayats via internet cable lines. Next, we also have huge amount of data centers. These data centers are generally servers who store our sensitive information and also serves as an intermediary for various digital transactions, digital records and so on. So this is actually what we know by digital infrastructure, and when we combine the role of the government in the same, we get something known as digital public infrastructure. For example, India is having 3 layers of digital public infrastructure. The very first is actually to know us, know you. For example, to know you, the government will be needing Aadhaar card. So that is actually the first layer of identity layer, how the government will be knowing you. Next, for example, the farmer need to make payments for getting their land records verified to the say document for their the verification of the document with the government, and for that the farmer also needs something known as payments that is facilitated through UPI. That is the second layer. Third layer is actually the data layer. Data layer is actually the amount of say protection that or the privacy features your data will be having with the government. So that is actually there are actually 3 layers of India's DPIs, and here we have to understand these 3 layers together create what we know as DPI in India's case. And here we can understand how this is very, very important. We have to understand for individuals, for example, you can get any government services at your fingertips. For example, if you need to enroll for a government scheme for a scholarship, you can directly go onto the government websites. You can get your documents verified via DigiLocker, right? You can pay and verify with your PAN card, with your bank, via UPIs, say net banking and so on. Everything is integrated. So as an individual, you are getting seamless access to services, and that will be say in wide amount of areas, education, health and so on. Next, it is also linked to a standard of living. If you can understand that farmer who had to travel 200 kilometers away to the district headquarters, right, in say for example without internet, without digital services, so you can understand the quality of life that farmer will be having. Or for example, the people who have say who avail of rations nowadays, their Aadhaar card is linked with say the ration cards, and say for example there are many issues with those ration systems, right? Maybe the government state government ration shops are not functioning well. So the government, if they will be finding out that these shops are not functioning well, the people are not getting the rations on time. How they will be doing the same? They will be finding out the same with this Aadhaar system, with the ration system which is digitized, which is existing on a digital platform. So we can understand that corruption can also be easily curbed, and if corruption is curbed, the standard of living of the people will also improve, especially the people who are belonging to the vulnerable sections. Next, we also find that on an individual basis, there are many amount of cost savings. For example, say take the case of fast tags. We all know that if you want to convey along a highway with various tolls on the highway, you have to get a fast tag, and for that you have to recharge for the same. Now, why did government bring the fast tag? Because there were huge amount of congestions of traffics on the fast tag portals, on the highway portals, and that is why fast tag portals have been installed to actually facilitate the faster movement of cars and trucks and all kinds of vehicles along the highways. And also this will be saving the costs. How? Because it will be saving the petroleum, because long queues along the highways will be burning up the petroleum and high cost for the people. Similarly, the services of UPI, e-governance facilities is actually saving costs of the people, right? And this is making them more and more productive. For businesses, it is simplifying the operations. Everything, if it is existing on a digital platform, it is very, very simple. We can understand, right? If say entire business operation is digitized, every record is available for say the transactions and verification, the business will be very, very simple to understand. Next, obviously, the ease of doing business will be also be facilitated, particularly via say transaction and payment systems. If the businesses are receiving online payments, they can be verified of the payment instantly instead of say relying on payments on cash and so on. Also, the amount of internet services, amount of data security protocols, if the businesses are having, they will be very happy. So they were actually having ease of doing business here. Next, also we have various amount of data of consumers on the digital platform, and this will be say data related to your date of birth or say demography, your say orientation and various other things. And this will be, for example, be used by businesses to cater their business services. And there are various privacy concerns here. But the thing is that your essential information, your biometric information will be essentially kept secret by the government officials and by the government departments via various mechanisms of cyber security protocols, encryption systems and so on. Next, for governments, obviously we can understand it will be leading to higher tax revenues and reduced operational costs, because more and more transactions which are happening digitally with reference to any government services, any digital entity, it will be definitely capturing the same in India's say official records. It can be tracked, it can be traced, those transactions, and if those transactions can be traced, the government can efficiently impose their taxes on the same, and it will be also saving the costs. Then also the service delivery, for example, say e-governance services, the various welfare schemes, they can also be projected to the people, and this will be also enhancing the India's image internationally. Next and finally, we have to understand any digital platform is totally transparent, and it is also making the government highly accountable to the people. So these are all the benefits that the DPIs are having with reference to our country. And also, if you can find here, we have DPIs such as Aadhaar, UPI and FASTag. We can understand that they are making our lives more and more easier. And here, if you can understand, there are many economic benefits and non-economic benefits of these DPIs too. If we understand what are economic and non-economic benefits, for example, economic benefits are those entities or those activities for which we can actually measure them and account in our GDP, But non-economic benefits are also those things which we definitely benefit from, but we cannot measure them. For example, say economic benefits are what? Cost savings. Cost savings means higher savings for the people, higher savings for the government, right? Next, it will be say impacting the GDP, because people will be saving their time, and if the people save their time, they can work somewhere else, and if they work somewhere else, they will be getting more and more say profits and employment and so on. And finally, this will be added revenue generation for the government in terms of higher taxes, tax collections, right? And that is what the NASSCOM study also say. See, these all figures are actually from the study itself. So they are telling that the direct impact of DPIs is actually around $14.7 billion, right? And in rupees, it is around 1.2 trillion rupees. But the indirect impact of, say, savings of time, or say the impact on ecology, that is also very, very important. For example, say the NDR system, which is a national digital education architecture, it saved around 25 lakh working days of our Indian teachers. So these teachers can use their time for, say, other productive activities. The UPI system also saved around 2, right, working days on an average basis on a single day annually, right? For what? For various citizens, for if the transactions are totally digital, the people can save their time. Next, if we can understand fast tags, the fast tags resulted into the savings of around $32 trillion due to the reduction in pollution. I told that fast tags actually reduce the number of queues at state tollways, national highways tollways. So fast tag is reducing the same. Aadhaar also eliminated what? Aadhaar and DigiLocker, it eliminated need of physical papers for documents, right? So that is also savings. So these are what? These are non-economic values, and these are non-economic benefits of DPIs. So we can understand the indirect impact of cost, time and environmental savings is also coming to be a substantial $17.1 billion, and that is a very, very good thing for India. And we have to understand, if the entire system is existing on a digital platform, we are not getting economic benefits only, we are also getting non-economic benefits too. So this is very, very important for us to understand. First, now here the concluding remarks that we have to understand is here, that not only DPIs are popular in India, but also all over the world it is gaining traction. In countries like Nigeria and most of the African countries, they are adopting India's digital infrastructure. For example, see the Aadhaar ecosystem, the UPI ecosystem, they are actually adopting the same. And this is actually very, very good for India's image. And India can also use its expertise by involving the private sector, Indian private sector here, to actually export this learning knowledge to other countries and also earn profits from the same. So it is also good for the Indian exports. And here we find that DPI's share in GDP is actually will be growing more in the near years. It is projected that in a scenario where DPI is growing at a very slow pace, even at that portion, India's DPIs will be contributing 2.9% to the GDP. And if, say, government is promoting more and more DPIs, investing more in the digital technologies, it will be going to as high as 4.2% of the GDP. And this makes it very, very important, because we can combine digital services with GDP to make our economic growth more higher. Next, we have to also understand some of the issues in this same. See, the very first issue with access to the equity, specifically because all of the digital services are not available to everyone. For example, the people who are having smartphones, they are having access to these services. But what happens to people who do not have? That is actually concern. To own a smartphone, you also need access to internet. If you can understand, in 2023, the access, or say internet penetration in India was only 48%. If you can understand, only 48% of Indians had internet access, and that also we can understand, attributed to the last year, it was actually increase of 7%. So this is actually a very slow growth over a time, and also not half of India is covered. It is expected that in 2024, the penetration may increase to 60%, as high as 60%, but that has to be seen based on the initiatives of the government. Next, also we have to understand the language is also an issue, because in India we have many languages, people speaks many tongues, and here the availability of DPIs in many Indian languages is also very important part. Next, the cyber security aspects of privacy concerns is also very real, because there have been many instances of leaks of Aadhaar data, of EPFO data recently by China. So this thing is also a very, very important aspect that Indian government has to keep track of. And finally, this report is also giving a very, very innovative idea of a super bot. You have all heard about Gemini, ChatGPT and so on, how you can easily ask questions and they can answer you many things. Imagine a super bot using artificial intelligence, and that is on the government websites. For example, if you want to apply for a driver license, you simply go to the website of the government, you just type in your requirements and you say that I have a DigiLocker, this is my Aadhaar ID and this is all my necessary details. And the SuperWatt will be doing what? It will be automatically signing you dates for say test registration, test drive and so all other means, and finally you will be getting everything on a digital platform. This is the next step of the digital public infrastructure that India is trying to aim for, and this report is also highlighting the same. Now this is a UPSC PYQ that we can all attempt. You can understand that this is the thing that they are asking, that what is this public key infrastructure. I can give you a small hint for this. Public key infrastructure, imagine that this is very important for the people among all these options. You can understand what is the most important here when we are concerning as India as a whole, India as a nation. What is the most important thing that is important for us? Next, the article is on restructuring the health system in India, and this is a very beautiful editorial written by former bureaucrat to the government of India. Now it is emphasizing on the need for health reforms, particularly in the electoral season, that is starting in 2024. And the main thing that the author is trying to highlight is the need for reforms in the health system in India. Now here the author is trying to give us a brief idea of what were the major health initiatives taken by India in the last 20 years, that is from 2000 to 2020s. Now here the very first thing that she mentions is the National Rural Health Mission. Now this is focusing, the entire editorial is actually focusing on a very important section, that is the rural health ecosystem of India. And here we can understand most of Indians are actually living in our own villages, and that is why it is very important that we focus on the villages. This is the first part. Second part is that the villages are not having good amount of health ecosystem. That means that the doctors per 10,000 of population is very low, right? It is below the WHO's recommendations, right? And also we can understand that the rural ecosystem with reference to health is also facing a lack of staff, equipments, medical equipments, medicines, skilled resources and so on. And that is why the government in early 2000s it launched a very important mission that is known as the National Rural Health Mission, and the government trying to increase the funding 3 times in that particular thing, and for that it also focused on 5,000 personnel and 1 million community health workers. Now what these community health workers do, they are actually ground level health workers. They actually go to various households and give various facilities such as vaccinations, awareness programs and so on. So it focused first on the grassroots level. Next, when the NDA government came in 2014, it scrapped the Medical Council of India because it thought that it became an institution not worth its name, and it replaced the same with National Medical Commission. And it did what? It signed for an additional 317 medical colleges. And where would these medical colleges would be? This would be at the grassroots level in tier 2, tier 3 cities, towns and also villages. And also the center increased the medical seats to more than 1 lakh. And this will be doing what? This will be supplying us with more and more doctors, because we have a very poor doctor to population ratio. Next, we have the National Health Authority. National Health Authority was also set up by the Indian government after 2014, which focused mostly on the rural health care system. And here, it focused on the infrastructural parts, infrastructure requirements with reference to capital investment in hospitals, in various clinics, what amounts of extra devices they needed, diagnostic devices that they needed, right? And this was actually a form of capital investment to focus on the infrastructural part. Next, the government also focused on various health insurance schemes, prominently the Ayushman Bharat scheme that we have with reference to the health ecosystem in India. It is focusing on what? It is focusing on giving health insurance to the poorest and poorest of the people. Also, we have the various other schemes and related initiatives related to say telemedicines, teleconsultations by the government, and we also have various distribution of free medicines among the people, particularly the vulnerable sections of the population. These were all taken after the 2014, right, when the government came, the new government came. Next, we also find a strategic purchasing of services from the public and the private sector. That means, say, for example, the syringe, the vaccines, the medicine, the generic medicine, generic drugs that we generally see at hospitals and clinics. These were actually purchased mostly from the private sector in India, and it is also the main thing which is being done right now too. Most of the equipments that are used at medicine shops and also at government hospitals, they're actually purchased from the private sector and very few from the public sector. So this is actually the norm that we will see, and also this is an issue going forward we also will be understanding in the later slides. Next, we also found that on an average in the last 20 years, the health expenditure roughly stagnated to around 1.2% of the GDP, right? And this is despite the amounts that were increased in the budget. But despite the amounts which have increased in the budgets almost every year to health sector, the proportion to the health sector remained only 1.2%. Now, we find that there are some issues. Now, before understanding the issues, let us understand some case studies which are very, very important to quote in your mains answers, right? Now, see, the very first case study is regarding Thailand and Turkey. In Thailand, they have a scheme such as the universal health coverage that was introduced in 2000, and what they did, they focused more on the public infrastructure, public investment of health services, right? They focused on the dominance of the public delivery system in health. That means that in the health system, the government will be the main entity providing the health services. And this is important. Why? Because if we have more health services in the private sector, they will be going for what? They will be going for profits, right? They will be going for profits, and this will be declining reducing the out-of-pocket expenditures of the people, which is almost as high as almost 50% in India, right? There are many studies which indicate the out-of-pocket expenditure of the people higher than 50%, and also there are some which indicate that it is in the range of 45 to 50% in India. But the thing is that it is very, very high. Why? Because in India we have more facilities, more say health infrastructure with reference to the private system. You can also relate to the same in your district or in your cities. You can find we have better private hospitals than government hospitals. But Thailand targeted the same thing. Also the same thing can be seen in Turkey. What they had a program, they still have a program known as Health Transformation Program, and which is doing a very, very significant thing. It is banning the dual practice of a government doctor to practice both in private and public sector. It said that the government doctor can only serve at the government hospital, nowhere else. It also added more 50,000 hospital beds, double the number of nurses and doctors, and also increased the private it also increased the public sector in health sector and decreased the private sector's presence in the health sector to 20%. That means, like Thailand, Turkey is also obeying that principle that we need more and more health infrastructure of the public, not the private, because private sector will be going for profits. And here we can find some chinks in India's armors with reference to the health architecture. We can find at the grassroots level, we have something known as primary healthcare centers. These are what? These are, say those mohalla clinics, those clinics which people immediately go to in villages whenever they fall ill. And let me tell you, at the most grassroots level, that is at the village level, at the sub-village level, 95% of the diseases are actually detected there. And if we can understand, if we can detect more than 90% diseases at the grassroots level and we can treat them at that level only, then we can understand at the national level the diseases burden will be less. And India must be focusing on this thing first. But India's primary and secondary healthcare systems, which is at the say basic grassroots level, secondary is actually present at say block level or district level, the main district hospitals. These are of very, very poor quality in India as of now. The issues that they face are generally in the lack of, say, nurses, doctors, special equipments. The equipments can be the various operation equipments, the medicines that the hospitals need, and the various amounts of other infrastructure, such as even the lack of good toilets in the particular hospitals. These are all the issues that they face, and that is why the people at the lowest levels of health ecosystem, they face the most problems with this primary and secondary sector of the health. But the tertiary sector of the health ecosystem, that is the multi-speciality hospital at, say, major districts, major cities, mostly the private say hospitals, they are far more developed than the primary and secondary. But India should be focusing on this system first, then the tertiary ones. Next, we also have various depressing data. For example, Bihar still has 1 doctor per 20,000 population. Can you imagine this? 1 doctor per 20,000 population. India still has maternity mortality rate 3 times the global average. And these are the things that India is still facing issues in their health system. And that is why we need something known as resilient integrated primary healthcare system. Right, and the author rightfully says that right now we have the manifesto time. Most of the political parties are releasing their manifestos, and this particular issue of improving the primary healthcare system must be featuring on the manifestos. Next, we also understand that we must be strengthening the grassroots level. At the base, at the grassroots or at the primary healthcare system, it is the most important healthcare system in India. And here we must be fixing and say increasing more and more funds, more and more investments, and also setting up more and more medical colleges for the same. And for this we have to understand that Thailand is also focusing or also has focused more on this particular sector. Next, we also need more and more skilled doctors, nurses, and we must not only be skilling them but also be allocating them to various districts in India who have a shortage for the same. So this allocation of the resources of doctors and nurses is also very, very important. Next, we have to understand that whatever the equipments that we buy from the private sector related to health, be it the syringes, be it the medicines, be it the diagnostic equipments and so on, we have to understand the private sector is always seeking profit. And also we have to understand that this is not a smart way to go forward, because the public investments in the health ecosystem, such as manufacturing more drugs and so on, is actually far more effective than depending on the private sector. So the government must be focusing themselves not only in skilling the doctors, making say more or setting up more and more medical colleges and so on, they must also be increasing the public's investment in various infrastructural aspects too. And finally, we must also be establishing IT and various other regulatory monitoring system. Why? Because there have been many instances in various Indian hospitals where we have found that the doctors and the nurses are not behaving in a proper way with the patients. And also there have been many absentees with respect to nurses and doctors at various government hospitals, government colleges. And that is a very, very serious aspect, because if the doctors and nurses are not present, who will be treating the ill? So that is also a very, very important aspect. In Thailand, they also have something known as human resource management system, such as the thing that we have at corporate offices, corporate places, right? So the hospitals and the government hospitals in the country, they can also have a HR system in the same direction to strengthen the main aspect of health at the primary sector, at the primary level of the Indian healthcare ecosystem. In the next one, we will be trying to understand a very, very important aspect in India's economic circle, which is the issue of lending. And this lending is not the lending that we have from banks. This is the lending that people do over digital platforms. And in the same aspect, at the 20th meeting of the Financial Stability and Development Council, the finance minister asked the financial sector to keep a strict vigil on the aspect of digital lending that is taking place in India. This is very, very important for prelims and also a very, very important aspect of mains, particularly to Indian society and ethics too. Now here, before going forward, let us understand about Fiscal Stability and Development Council first. See, it was set up under the Financial Stability Division of the Department of Economic Affairs under the Ministry of Finance. Now let me tell you, this is not a statutory body, it is just a department under the Ministry of Finance. And why it was set up? It was actually set up after a recommendation of the Raghuram Rajan committee, and it told that after the global financial crisis, the financial sector in any country, they cannot be only dependent on, say, RBI or SEBI or only the government of India. We need a coordinated aspect. We need a coordinated response for the entire government branches. And that is for what? To contain the various macroprudential aspects, that is the impact of loans, the impact of banks on the overall economic scenario, and also over the various financial irregularities that can take place at various institutions such as banks and, say, even at the government regulators which are regulating the banks and the entire financial aspects. So that is why the committee, Raghuram Rajan committee, in 2008, it suggested that there can be a council where the Union Finance Minister can be the chairperson, and there in the members we have the various arms of the government as members, such as the governor of the RBI will be there, the finance secretary will be there, and a secretary to the Department of Economic Affairs, Department of Financial Services. These are under the Ministry of Finance. Then the Ministry of Corporate Affairs will be there, right, represented by a secretary. Also the secretary to the MeitY, right, the Information Technology Ministry. They are also here in the Financial Stability and Development Council. Then we have other members such as the Chief Economic Advisor and also the chairmen of the regulatory bodies like SEBI, IRDA, PFRD and IBBI. Like, these are all the regulators, we can understand, who are involved in what? The financial sector of the country. And we need their coordinated responses to the same. The secretary of this council is actually the additional secretary to the Department of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance. Now what this council will be doing? This council will be looking at the financial sector development. It will be looking into the various stakeholders of the country, such as the banks, the people who need loans and who are supplying the loans, and how these loans are actually given. So it will be about looking at the big picture stuff. Next, it will be looking at the inter-regulatory affairs. Say, for example, an issue and a particular issue is going out in the stock markets. What is the issue of the stock market on the banking system, on, say, the insurance sector, on, say, the pension sector? It will be looking into an inter-regulatory coordination. Next, it will be also focusing on financial literacy, because financial literacy is the most important thing that the people like us need to actually know about the various government schemes and sectors and so on. Next, it will be also looking obviously at the macroprudential supervision of the economy, and this will be looking at the influence of the decisions of large financial conglomerates such as the stock market, such as the big private companies in India and their decisions on the overall economic systems. It will be looking at the financial stability arising from all these aspects and how this impacts economic growth, employment, inflation in the country. It will be also trying to understand why some people of the country, such as the vulnerable section, the SC, ST communities, the tribal sectors, some women, students, they are left out of the financial system, left out of the banks, and that is why we need to include them in the financial sector. This is actually known as financial inclusion. They also will be looking to the same. And finally, not only domestic affairs, it will be also looking at the international part, such as coordinating with FATF, Financial Stability Board, and so on. And this will be actually facilitating the main things at the international level. Now, here the main aspect is that the Finance Ministry is talking about the rise of digital lending and the issues that they are actually facing. See, what is digital lending? It is just the lending that is taking place on web platforms or, say, on online mobile applications. It is generally popular in India as of now. Why? Because we have large number of people who are having smartphones across rural areas, urban areas and whatnot. Everyone nowadays have smartphones, and most often we have all received an SMS, right, or say notification that do you need loans, instant loans in 10 seconds, 1 lakh rupees in just 1 second directly into your bank accounts. We get this kind of notifications, right? It is just those things. Actually, due to more and more smartphone penetration, actually people need loans of, say, for example, say 2000 rupees If you even need loans of even 500 rupees, you will be getting the same on these platforms. So the credit range, it ranges from 2000 rupees to even lakhs of rupees. Every kind of denomination of loans you can get from these apps. Also, with reference to these loans are processed in a second. In 1 second, you will be getting this 2000 rupees or 1 lakh rupees directly in your bank accounts. Now, this is posing a very serious issue. We can understand, if we can see here, the trend of this digital lending in India is increasing rapidly. And here, that is why the RBI is telling that and also the FSDC is also telling that we need to regulate the same. Because according to the recent RBI report, it is said that India is having the most number of digital lending or loan applications in the entire world, and out of them 600 are illegal. And what do you mean by illegal lending apps? They are not registered with the RBI. If registered, they are not following the norms of the RBI. They are not following the requirements of the various regulators in the country, right? For example, say you cannot, for example, give unlimited amount of money to a teenager, because that person does not have a capacity to pay it back. But what these loan companies do, they give the money to the teenagers, they charge high amount of interest rates, and if they cannot return back the loan, they will be doing what? They will be doing very, very illegal activities, such as contacting or the various people in your contact list, such as your mom, your dad, your friends, your sisters, brothers, relatives, cousins, and so on. They will be contacting all these people and be telling that you have taken a loan, and sometimes they also send nefarious pictures, morphed images of you to your relatives, to your friends, and this is actually nothing more than an harassment. And also this is leading to many suicides. For example, say in the city of Hyderabad alone, it has led to more than 8 suicides last year due to the practice of these digital lending apps. And this is because they are illegal, they are not regulated, no one is looking into them, and people are falling into this trap. They are getting into this trap of easy loans and they are not getting out. Now, another aspect of this is actually known as money laundering. Also, Enforcement Directorate in India, it has signed alarm bells related to the money laundering aspect of this same thing, because it has been said that these people, these loan apps, they are using many bank accounts which are not operative, and they are using those inoperative bank accounts to actually do money laundering. And this is also very a kind of a threat to India. Next, we have to understand that there have been many steps taken, but so far we have to understand no concrete ban has been yet imposed. But yeah, RBI here is a nodal department to deal with all the complaints with reference to them. In August 2022, RBI published the very first guidelines. In September 2023, Ministry of Finance launched multi-agency crackdown on these loan apps. How? Firstly, it asked the RBI to actually have some whitelist of the legal apps. That means the apps which have been registered with the RBI and following RBI norms. Next, it asks the MeitY to actually look at all the Play Store, the Apple App Store, and all the app stores to look for the apps which are not whitelisted with regard to digital lending and file a report of the same. Next, it also said that we must be monitoring mule or rented accounts. What are these? These are actually those accounts, those bank accounts with which these actually digital lending companies are using to facilitate money laundering, to facilitate these illegal lending apps. And here, the people with actual accounts, they are actually putting to blame. So it has been also asked this thing. And finally, in February 2024, right now, the FSDC is right now looking into the same. It is discussing, and it has said that it should be checking the spread of this unauthorized lending through these online apps. Now, here we have a 2016 PYQ on FSDC. I want all of you to attempt the same with the knowledge that we have gained so far. And you can comment the same in the comment box. Now, in this article, we'll be looking into the rights issue, because a very prominent startup has recently issued rights issue after a 99% cut in its valuation. Now, we need not look into the details of what is the same, but yeah, we have to look into a very important economic concept which is known as the rights issue here. Very important for prelims. Now to understand this, let us understand this with a very simple example first. See, imagine an XYZ corporation. This is a company which has say 1000 shares in the market. This is actually known as outstanding shares. And for example, say you are owning how much? 100 shares or 10% of the company. So you are having 100 shares and you are having 10% ownership. Now what the company is thinking, XYZ is thinking, okay, I need more money. I can have more money from the banks, but I have to pay say higher interest to the banks and so on. I don't want to go to the banks. I do not like banks. So what I will do, I will go to my shareholders who are having this 1000 shares and you are having 100 shares of this 1000, right? So what the company is telling, okay, now I will be doing one thing. The company said to you that for every 5 shares that you have, I will be giving you an additional share. Now is this additional share free? No. This is actually discounted. Say for example, the original share at the market price is at 20 rupees per share. Now I will be giving a 5 rupees discount. I will be offering you at 15 rupees. So for example, say out of every 5 shares you have, you will be getting 1 extra share. This is actually something known as a rights issue. Now why rights? Because you have a right of any additional new share because you are already having 100 shares or you already have an ownership in the company before the issue of these shares. So actually you as a shareholder is having a right. You are having a right on any additional issue. So the company is told that okay, you are a very loyal shareholder. I will be issuing this in the ratio of 1:5. Now here this is actually issued at a discount. So what options you have? You can exercise your rights. You can buy the extra share at 15 rupees instead of 20 rupees. Right? You can buy, and this will be doing what? This will be increasing your stake in the company, right? Next, you can also sell your shares. You can also sell, or for example, you can tell your friend, okay, I have this rights issue of this company. Do you want to buy this extra share? You can get a discount of 5 rupees. So you can also share. You can also sell this same thing to another person. That person can be having the same rights issue in your name. Next, you can say that I do not want to sell, I do not want to buy, I will just letting it expire. I do not want to do anything. So you also have this option. So a person who is having rights issue is having 3 options here. And why do we have this same thing? Because sometimes the company wants to have more money. They want to raise more capital from the company, from the market. And here they will be doing a discounted share. So directly from the company you can buy. And finally, this is in a proportionate manner. So whatever ownership that you have, for example 10%. So if you buy in this proportion, that is 1:5 ratio, your percentage of ownership in the company remains the same. So this is why sometimes the companies actually release rights issues, right? To raise money and also to reward existing shareholders, because the shareholders first who are having ownership in the company, they must be getting first preferences. So that is why this is the first thing that they want to do. And finally, they want to avoid dilution of ownership. If they issue say 200 new shares, it will be diluting the existing shares, and the ownership of all the shareholders. In the rights issue, it is released in a proportion. So that is why it dilutes very, very less. It is not diluting as much as it is say releasing 200 new shares. In the final article, we will be trying to understand the main aspects of sugarcane and the fair and remunerative prices, which is like the MSP, which is given to the sugarcane farmers. And here the cabinet recently approved a hike in the FRP recently. Now we have to understand some things about sugarcane, because this is a question which UPSC asks again and again in the years, and that is what makes sugarcane crop very, very important for us to understand. We can understand for sugarcane we need a temperature of around 21 to 27 degrees Celsius, and the climatic conditions that are required are hot and humid. Next, the rainfall must be say in the range of 75 to 100 centimeter annually, but we have to understand excessive rainfall destroys the crops too. In the aspect of soil, we need a loam or clay loam soil, and that must be deep and fertile with a neutral pH level, not too much acidic, not too much basic, and it can slightly tolerate some amount of saline or alkaline soil, but not acidic soils. So please do remember these things for your prelims. Next, we have to understand our position in the entire world is second just after Brazil, and the most important parts in India or states in India which are producing sugarcane are Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. Now here, what are FRP? FRP stands for fair and remunerative prices. This is actually a sort of MSP that is given to the sugarcane farmers. But here it is slightly different. Here what the government does is actually, this is the minimum price at which the sugarcane is to be purchased by the sugarcane mills, the sugarcane factories. They will be buying the same from the farmers, sugarcane farmers, and this is actually under an act. This is actually statutory. This is actually an order, that is Sugarcane Control Order of 1966. So you have to understand this is statutory in nature, right? And who will be giving the money to the sugarcane mills? The government will be giving. The government will be giving the money, that is a price that is fixed by the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, recommended by the Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices. Same mechanism as the MSP here. This has been on the recommendation of the Rangarajan Committee on Sugarcane Industry, and here we have to understand this is giving a very important set of initiative and fixed amount of prices to the sugarcane farmers. And here there are many other initiatives too. For example, the state advised prices. This is exactly the FRP only, but this is actually given by the state governments directly to the sugarcane mills. Next, we also have National Policy on Biofuels, which is trying to utilize the sugarcane to produce ethanol blended petrol. Next, we also have Sustainable Sugarcane Initiative to promote more and more sustainable production of sugarcane using natural fertilizers and say less amount of irrigation, because sugarcane requires a large amount of water. So this is actually initiated by the government to produce sugarcane which is using less amount of fertilizers, water and so on. And finally, we have also schemes for extending financial assistance to sugarcane undertakings in forms of modern machinery, capital machinery to the sugarcane mills owners. So actually help them to actually process the sugarcane and produce final outputs more and more profitably. So this is actually 2015 PYQ on the FRP here. I want all of your answers in the comment section. With this, I thank you all for your patient approach, and with this I wish you all the best till we meet again, and do attempt the quiz which is following up. Thank you very much.